Hey guys, HardlyBriefDan here with another episode of the Unity Make an RPG series. Today we're going to continue working on the ability system. I'm going to do a quick overview of what we did last time, talking about the damage over time class and the slow class. We're going to fix this nasty error that we have here, this exception that I did not mean to leave you guys with, so I apologize for that. And then I'll answer a few of your questions, and then we're going to start working on the Fireball ability, and I'll tell you what's going to be coming up in the next few videos. So let's first talk about what we worked on last time. So here we have a range class, which is, not the range. We have a damage over time class, which was the first class that we created, a new behavior type. And really all we did is we copied and pasted it from area effect, and then we added a few things that we wanted to change, right? We took away the area radius, because we determined our dot doesn't have an area radius, or at least my dot doesn't have an area radius. Maybe yours does. But we kind of talked about those things, and actually see an error here where we have this damage over time, which we don't need the AR because that stands for area radius. So I'm going to actually go ahead and delete that. But here we have our damage over time constructor. We have our effect duration. We created the DOT coroutine where we start a timer, and while the timer is running, every so many seconds, depending on how long damage tick duration is, we apply damage. So if our total time is 30 seconds, we apply damage every 5 seconds, then we'll apply damage, wait 5 seconds, apply damage, wait 5 seconds, apply damage until our timer runs out. Then we stop it, reset it, and then exit out of our coroutine. So what we're going to be doing now is looking at the slow class, which is the last class that I left you guys with. Basically, we created one other ability type behavior. I talked about how this could be a status effect, and I did play with the idea of creating a new status effect type, and then separated the status effects versus the ability behaviors. But I kind of thought, and maybe you guys have a different opinion, let me know in the comments below, but I kind of said, a slow effect is basically a behavior of an ability. It's how the ability reacts. So we don't really need to apply a status effect, or we don't need to create a whole nother type called status effect. They can just be ability behaviors themselves. And then I got to thinking, it'd be really cool if ability behaviors had their own ability behaviors, right? Maybe an ability behavior such as slow, or let's say, it's called Ice Blast, has sub-ability behaviors that also do different things. So maybe maybe an Ice Blast has a range ability behavior, and it has a area effect ability behavior. Maybe attached to it, right? So when the ice ball lands, it explodes, and everything in that ice ball maybe has that's attached to the damage over effect. Maybe the area effect. Maybe that area effect has its own child ability behaviors like slow or freeze, which we can apply those then. But anyway, that's to kind of think later on down the road when we get this system fine-tuned and stuff. But it's just something to think about. And I also wanted to let you guys know that if you have come up with some great ability behaviors, or you have a specific one that you'd like me to try to code, write down in the comments below. And if you've created one, go ahead and leave it down in the comments below and share it with us so that we can all add it to our projects if it fits what we're working on. But anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and work on the bulk of this video. Oh, I actually want to go ahead and fix this error, which I've actually already fixed a little bit. You might see this perform behavior. It looks a little different, right? So let me go to the base class of ability behaviors, where we have this perform behavior virtual void method. When we first created this method, we set it to take one argument of a vector 3, and we called it start position. Then we decided, hey, we don't need that for all of our effects or behaviors, so let's add the game object, the object that we hit, and therefore we can get the position of the things we want. Now when we did that, we actually broke the ranged ability behavior class, because range takes the start position of our player object, or the caster object, if you will. So what I've gone ahead and do is in our public virtual void perform behavior method, which is in the ability behaviors class, I've changed the perform behavior method to take two arguments, one being the game object, player object, and then the other being the type game object, and called it object hit. So go ahead and add those there, and then go back into your classes, so the area effect, and paste it in the perform behavior method, and then in the perform behavior method for damage over time, in slow, and then finally in range, go ahead and paste it in range. So I'm going to delete the vector 3 start position. I'm in the public override void perform behavior and range class. I highlighted the vector 3 start position. I'm going to copy, or I'm going to paste in the game object, player object, and then game object, object hit. Now since doing that, we've created another issue where we start our coroutine. It takes a vector 3 start position, right? Well, the way we're going to get our start position is by using the player object. So I'm going to double click player object and copy it. I'm going to delete the start position. I'm going to paste player object in the check distance method here, or coroutine method call, and then we're going to do player object dot transform. So we're going to get its transform component, and then we're going to get its position property. So there we go. When this perform behavior is called, we'll pass in our player object, and from that it'll get its start position wherever the spell originated from. Pretty simple. So now that we've done that, let me make sure we got rid of the errors. And we did. We got a couple warnings, but that's all right for now. So now we're left with 4 behaviors here in the hierarchy. We have ability and ability behaviors. We also talked about interface last time. I'm not going to go into more now. I believe we talked about interface last time. But anyways, what we're going to be looking at is this ability here called Fireball Ability. So go ahead and open that up. And the reason why we're going to be doing this is I want to talk about one way you can create your abilities for your project. So if you think creating a database full of abilities is too much for you, or if you just don't want to do it, or if you don't want to follow along and follow along creating an editor in the next several videos, then you have an option of just creating a whole bunch of classes which are your abilities. So in our abilities folder, you could create hundreds and hundreds of classes, all of different abilities. So we have a fireball ability, we have an ice ball ability, a slow, a freeze. You have all these different type of abilities, and you could create a class for each one of those. The problem with that is now you have a whole bunch of files, whole bunch of classes, and it gets kind of tricky to maintain over the lifetime of your project. And especially if you're working with several people, having 1,000 classes, which is just 1,000 abilities, is very, very hard to maintain and to update and to really read. So that's the reason why we're going to look at building a database. But I want to show you guys how we can create an ability using a class structure like this fireball ability that we're going to work on now, if you don't want to do the database. Having said all that, we will be working on creating the physical fireball in the next couple videos, and then we'll be building an editor database, an editor for a database to store all of our abilities, and then at the start of the game we can load all those abilities, or we can reference the abilities when we need them. If you are trying to get ahead and start creating a database, there are tons of videos on YouTube of how to create editors and how to create databases. Bergzerg Arcade is doing a great one right now. Several videos long. He's showing how to create a whole item system. Definitely recommend watching it. He talks about scriptable objects, which we'll talk about, and he creates a whole structure. So if you want to go ahead and jump ahead, definitely check out those videos. If not, you can follow along with me. We'll be working on an editor ourselves in a few videos. Alright, having said all that, let's go ahead and start working on the Fireball Ability class. So here we have a public class, Fireball Ability, and we just wrote the comment here, kind of what we wanted to do. Range at the start, max distance, it requires a target, those kinds of things. What we're going to do now is create the inheritance. So Fireball Ability is going to inherit. So the way you do that is with this colon, and we're going to inherit ability, right? Because Fireball Ability is an ability. And you could get rid of the ability tag if you don't like, if you just want to label it Fireball, it's up to you. But here it inherits ability. Now we're going to create the constructor, which is going to be a public Fireball Ability. And if you remember, we've done this several times before. Fireball Ability inherits ability, which ability has a constructor, 2 constructors here, where one takes basic information, ability behaviors, and then one takes a lot more information. What we're going to do is, I've actually already gone ahead and I've already done it, but copy the first one, which is this one here. So just highlight it all, hit Control C, and then paste it like that above it. And we're going to create one other constructor. The reason why we're creating another constructor is because I've set these up so that they're more helpful in the editor and not so much with creating the class structure that we're going to do in this video. But I want to demonstrate the class structure, so we're going to create a new constructor for this. So here we have another public ability constructor. We're going to take basic information, but that's it. We're not going to take anything else. So I'm going to delete the list of ability behaviors. We're going to delete the behaviors here. Pretty simple. The other thing I've gone ahead and do, or what we are going to do, is set a... oh, we don't actually need that. We're going to reference the ability behaviors, which is the behaviors variable that's in the ability class, and we'll look at doing that in just a moment. So let's go to the fireball ability, and let's work on the constructor for it. So right now we know that fireball ability takes a constructor of base, right? And base takes in a new basic object information type, which that also has a constructor itself that takes in either a name and a description, and a name and description and a sprite if you have a sprite. So in order to do that, we're going to jump into one of our classes like area effect. I'm going to scroll up to the top, and I'm going to copy the private const string AB name and description like that. I'm going to go back into fireball ability. I'm going to paste that in there, and I'm also going to grab the private const sprite icon. And I'm only doing that again. I'm going to leave it commented out because I don't have sprites for this, but it's just a reminder that you can also load in your sprite here if you have it, and then you can include it in the basic object information constructor in the base class. Again, if you have it. If you don't worry about it, but it's there if you need it. So now what I'm going to do is change AB name to just A name for ability name and ability description. Let's change the ability name to fireball. Or if you're using a different name, go ahead and do that. And then we're going to say a fiery mass. Is that fiery mass that explodes on impact, right? So one of the things we have is when this fireball lands, it explodes, we create an area effect. So that needs to be included, I think, in our description. If you have a better description, go ahead and leave it in the comments below, and I'll definitely add it. But now we need to add the basic object information constructor. We need to add the A name and description to it. So let's go ahead and just pass those in. So we have A name and then A description. And that will satisfy our base constructor here. I'm going to delete that and have it. I want it to reformat for me. There we go. So we have our constructor. Fireball doesn't take anything, but it's going to take the information from base, which is constant, which we can't edit. Now, if you're going to be going this route, this is one thing to think about. You could have tons of constructors here that allow you to create different types of fireballs. Maybe if that's a preference. Again, if you're not going to be creating the database, then you might want to think about creating several different types of constructors. But if we call create new, but basically new fireball ability, I don't want to have any arguments in it besides the two that are required for our base class. Now, having said all that, what we're going to look at now is creating the behaviors list. So now in our base constructor here, we actually need to instantiate or create the list behaviors. So what we're going to do is copy behaviors, and we're going to paste this down into our constructor here. We're going to set behaviors equal to a new list type, right? Like that. So ability or behaviors is equal to a new ability behaviors list. And now in our constructor here in Fireball ability, we can access that list using the public get. So I believe we can say this dot ability behaviors. So we're getting the base ability classes ability behaviors public get, which is here. Right, we created this get for it, which allows us a public way of accessing this private member. So we're going to do this dot ability behaviors dot add, and we're going to be adding ability behaviors that we want. So just for fun, we can say let's add ranged. We'll create a new ranged, right? And range also has some information in it. Range takes what? What does our range constructor take? Well, it takes a float min distance, a float max distance, and then a boolean is random. So knowing that information, we can go into our fireball ability here, and we can pass in a minimum range of 10F, and then let's say a maximum range of 20F. So these are just units. These are Unity units. And then we're going to say true, right? Because we want our bool, we want it to be random. Since we're passing in a min and max, we want it to be random, meaning it's going to choose a random distance between 10 and 20 every single time this thing is created. Now that we've done that, we want to go ahead and add a few more. So we have our range ability, which is one of the first things we said that we want this to have. The next thing we want to have is an area effect. So the way we do that is we just delete this information here, and we're going to say new area effect. Oh, no area effect. Now if we go into that class, we know that the constructor here takes an area radius, an effect duration, and then what do we use that? A base effect damage. So all we need to do is in our constructor is add those variables. So we know, let me keep it up. We know that we need a area radius. So our area radius is going to be set to 2F. Right? So if I go into Unity real quick, let me load up that scene. I believe it's. So here we have our projectile, right? And when we call to create this class, what we're going to be doing is creating this sphere, and we're going to set its radius, the sphere collided, we're going to set its radius to 2, right? You can set it to whatever you want. I just chose 2 randomly. You can set it to 20, you know, however big you want your area effect to be, but I'm going to set it equal to 2 in the constructor in our class. So here we set to 2. Now we need effect duration, I believe, which is ED, effect duration. We're going to say this effect lasts for let's say 2.3 seconds. Random arbitrary time does not matter. It can be any float you want. I just did 2.3 because that's what popped in my head. So now that we've done that, we're going to add the last bit for our constructor here, which will be a BD, which is the base damage, base effect damage, which to me I think should be like, let's say 50. F for float. Now, base damage it doesn't mean anything, right? And one thing that you might want to do is if all your fireball abilities are going to be the same and you don't have multiple constructors, a smart practice would be to create a lot of private const int, and we can say base effect damage. We can set that equal to 50. And we're going to make it a float, so make it a constant float. And the reason why I say to do that and replace the actual number is, again, let's say you're on a team, or let's say you create this now and 5 months later you come back to this project, you have no idea what 50 means. But if you create a constant variable up top, you know it's base effect damage, and therefore when you come back to edit this later on, you can just replace all those variables really quickly and test out how the ability performs. It's just something to think about. Just definitely wanted to talk about that. Now let's go ahead and add one more effect, which would be the damage over time. So we're going to say this dot ability dot add, and we're going to do new damage over time. Damage over time also takes a few variables, so let's go to that class and check it out. So damage over time takes an effect duration and then a base damage effect. So we'll pass that in now. We'll say effect duration, we'll say damage over time is going to be 45 seconds. 45, and then a base effect damage, we can pass in the same thing. If you want to create several one of these, you can copy that, paste it in and say base effect damage DOT, and then the other one could be AOE. So our AOE does 50, but our dot does 10, right? And we could pass in that. So when you come back later on, you say, okay, damage over time has a different base effect damage. It's called base effect damage DOT, which is 10 damage every how often we decided to do it, which we actually didn't set. So we can include it in our constructor. Let's go ahead and do that now. So in the damage over time, we're going to actually create a float, and it's going to be called DTD for damage tick duration. We're going to set damage tick duration equal to DTD. And now, since we've added that, we're going to have an error because we're not adding that now that damage over time takes 3 arguments, not 2, we need to go ahead and add it. So now we'll add our D damage tick duration, which will say every 5 seconds. Again, a best practice, if you will, would be to include all these variables, these numbers here. Instead of just raw numbers, you'd create a constant variable for them and pass them in. Would be the smarter way. Okay, now that we've done that, I'm going to leave the video here, but we're going to talk about in the next video how to instantiate this ability or create the ability and then apply it to a game object and then actually create the physical spell. So I know you guys are looking forward to that, so please stick around. Hopefully in the next video we'll start getting in some more graphic stuff, because I know that's a lot more fun than just the data. But data is important because data is what really creates our gameplay. Or creates the effective gameplay, I guess. So anyways, I'll talk to you guys next time. Make sure we don't have any errors. We don't. Good. If you like the video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys next time.